It is my pleasure now to introduce to you our plenary speaker, whom you talked about, both of you, Dr. Lorin Lindner, who will talk on reciprocal recovery, how veterans and animals suffering from trauma heal each other. You're welcome to write your questions for Lorin on the chat, and we will address them at the end of her presentation. This is the wonderful way Lorin is inviting us to meet her. I get introduced fairly often, and I wonder at times, how do I identify? It's easy to trot out profession, country of origin, marital status, but I like to go back to my true roots. I am an animal. I am not apart from nature. I am a part of nature. And as a social mammal, I was born with the need for social relatedness, not just for my own survival, but as the primary way I organize my internal world. And ever since I was a child, that relatedness was important to me, not just between humans, but also between species. I learned as a child that deep emotional connections were available with animals when they weren't always available with humans. Lorin, the stage is yours.
Hello, hello. I just got unmuted and I thank you for that. I thank you and also Suzanne and Stephen for that lovely introduction. And shalom, manishma, anis lecha lehotkan. I'm very happy to be here. Also, Jambo and Habari Yako, because I'm coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. So I hope this connection stays well, and welcome to everyone. I'm very pleased to be able to be a part of this. So we can have the slideshow. I don't actually see it on my screen. Here it comes. And I'll just start with the first slide, which is the title of the program, Reciprocal Recovery, Interventions for Veterans and Animals with Trauma. This methodology is appropriate for others as well as veterans who suffer from trauma. And here we come. There we go. And if we can just move ahead to the bio, there's my bio for you. And like Sarit said, it's easy to identify myself in all these professional ways, working at the Veterans Administration Hospital, doing various methods of treatment for trauma with the veterans that I worked with, and also working in the domestic violence field, again, with people who have suffered from trauma. And that's all the way I can identify sort of the bread and butter way, or bread and soy butter way, that gets me a fast track in the door of the professional world. But when I really think about how I see myself as an animal rights activist who also practices psychology and has for 38 years. When I got licensed back in 1988. So I was about 13 when I became an activist, although I think some of us who were just born with this tremendous love for animals just get it right away, that we are one with them. And by the time I was a little bit older, at 13, I became an activist, so to speak, in that I joined the New England Anti-Vivisection Society after reading an article about a dog that lied on the grave of his owner or companion for many years after the companion's death, and it really touched me. And Many years later, I got to be a part of the New England Anti-Vivisection Society, or NEVS, thanks to a friend and colleague, very dear friend, Dr. Theo Capaldo, who was president of the board of NEVS at the time, and I got on that board and served with her and the rest of the board for many years after that. And I had a personal experience with vivisection myself at the age of 17, 18, when I was first in college in upstate New York. And I adopted a dog that was just roaming around campus, and people would throw him out food to eat, but he was pretty much a stray. And I took him in, and a couple of years later, he was stolen for vivisection. And we know this because at the time, this is back in the 70s, although it persisted all the way until we got laws passed to stop it. The USDA issued licenses to dealers who would go around and literally pick up stray dogs or not so stray dogs, because many of the dogs they picked up had collars on them, and would sell them to labs by the pound. So my dog was a nice, big, hefty guy, and I'm sure he brought them some money, and it was probably one of the most tragic things that ever happened to me when I realized where he was going, what they could have possibly have done with him. And it's no accident that I worked in the anti-vivisection movement for many years and have ever since. And I see myself as this activist, but also as a psychologist. And I saw that as almost two just separate parts of my life. I didn't realize that bringing them together, uniting those aspects of myself, was going to be what really became the most meaningful thing for me in terms of the rest of my life, in terms of how I'm living my life, that I was able to integrate my activism within the field of psychology. And I feel like that's been that I've been able to do with my life. And how that happened was that I started a program at the VA hospital for homeless veterans, unhoused veterans. And it was difficult actually to get the Veterans Administration to even acknowledge that there were homeless veterans, but there were indeed homeless veterans, especially in the Los Angeles area. And we did this program, and around the same time, I was called because they knew I was in, the animal movement, advocacy movement. I got called to help rescue a parrot that was in need. It was literally abandoned in a home because she matched the living room decor, and the home was for sale, and they were selling her along with the home. And I was asked to come in and rescue her, and I said no, because I was super busy and I really didn't have a lot of experience with parrots. But 37 years later, she has taught me everything I know, need to know about parrots and starting sanctuary, because I, of course, took her in, and she lived with me for all of those decades and taught me that as a social being, she needed to be in a flock, and that I needed to create a sanctuary for her. But in the meantime, I was bringing her to work with me at this veterans hospital, where I was conducting groups with Army Rangers and Navy SEALs and Marines who were sitting there with their arms crossed and not making any eye contact with me at all during my individual and group counseling sessions, like this woman was really going to help them in 45 minutes a week. They weren't really available for that. But with the parrot in my office, it became a completely different story. And I noticed a change in these veterans who became more soft and more open and more emotionally available. So I went around to all the chairs of the different departments that I worked with at the VA, the Veterans Hospital, And I went to psychiatry and psychology and nursing and social work and public health. And I asked the department heads, would they welcome a sanctuary on the grounds of the VA that would help veterans help parrots? Because the parrots were in need of help as well. They were rescued, they were coming from horrendous conditions. Very often I would get parrots that were literally like this, like my first girl, Sammy, abandoned in cages, in back rooms, in backyards, in tool sheds. People who didn't know what to do with these long-lived creatures, feeding them the same monotonous diets for their entire long lives, and really essentially just being in solitary confinement or captured from the wild and brought in through quarantine, which all these things are really just extremely traumatic for parrots. So Sammy had told me that she needed companions, so I had been rescuing more and more parrots, and at some point I realized I need to start a sanctuary. So I asked all these department heads, and they were like all in agreement. They knew that this would be good for the veterans. What they didn't know is it was also going to be good for the parrots. So I went to the chief medical officer at the VA, and it only took 6 years, which is pretty fast in Veterans Administration time. But it happened, and I was able to open up this program. And it's really transformative for me as well as the veterans and the parrots, because I got to see a way in for these veterans that wasn't working in any other fashion that I found. So we can move to the next slide, if you will. And I want to say that I think this was able to happen because this movement was happening. All of you people were starting to get aware and talking about these things. I mean, I'm in Nairobi, and my hotel room has soap and body lotion that literally says on the front, plant-based. I mean, we've come a long way from when I became a vegan 53 years ago, and there weren't even salad bars. So I really believe that this came from all of you, all of us who transformed animal injustice into a societal problem by making it more visible, putting it on political agendas. You just did not let up. You promoted the concept of animal sentience and intelligence. You taught it to your students. You formed committees and wrote articles and books and created conferences like this one. And it's just something I'm so grateful for, because I feel like that's what enabled me to do what I do. And I love the expression by Margaret Mead, and it's oft repeated, but I will say it again here. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So we can go to the next slide. And a lot of this, as you know, if you were present yesterday, came from neuroscience that demonstrated the reciprocity of nervous systems across vertebrate species, right? So, until recently, the human-animal relationship was basically one of our dominance over animals, and this has gone on for millennia. But there has been a theoretical and philosophical shift where many animals are seen, or hopefully all animals are seen now, vertebrate species at least, are seen as having intelligence, as having society, as having culture, different from, but equally important as that of our own species. And a lot of this came from the work by Dr. Gay Bradshaw. She was also a pioneer in this field. She talked about how diverse species share common neurobiological structures and mechanisms that underlie properties considered once before uniquely human. Things like culture, personality, language, emotions. But no, We know now that other animals share this. And another friend, Jeffrey Mason, wrote When Elephants Weep, was a groundbreaking book showing that, of course, animals have emotions. That's not new to any of us who really share space with animals. And we can go to the next slide. So we learned, unfortunately, from doing experiments on animals, that animals also get PTSD. In fact, that's how we researched how humans get PTSD and the mechanisms of suffering from trauma. We did this through research that was done on animals, and we know, of course, that they do get PTSD, and so much of this research was done in the early 60s and 70s, but also persisted for decades. And some of that, if you recall, was done by Martin Seligman. He was the president of APA not too long ago, actually, even after doing these horrendous experiments. He, of course, has now moved on to what's called positive psychology, thank goodness. But he did those early experiments in learned helplessness, where dogs were put in drowning tanks and inescapable shock chambers, and they literally learned that how to become helpless. But we could have learned this so much easier from just studying human populations. The same with head injuries, the Ackerman studies, which were just atrocious, the crash studies and the head injury studies to study traumatic brain injuries. And these macaque monkeys suffered clearly from traumatic brain injury and PTSD as a result of these studies. So we know that they get it as well, and we did not have to study it from them. There's 100,000 car accidents a year that we could have been looking at and studying human populations. Same thing with maternal child deprivation studies that were done with macaque monkeys as well by Harry Harlow. We called it the Harlow Chamber of Horrors. And I work in community mental health, and I work with foster children, and just the idea of having to put animals through any kind of deprivation from their own parents because of wanting to study what deprivation does. And we have plenty of evidence of that in the foster care system that we could have studied. So I just want to make a point that neuroscience was largely focused on how animals got traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, and complex trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder. And of course, it was happening in both ways. We studied it and learned how it affected humans, and didn't really bother to look at how it affected the animal, him or herself. And interestingly enough, Dr. Capaldo and I, and Dr. Bradshaw, and the Fauna Sanctuary did studies on complex trauma in chimpanzees, and Dr. Bradshaw and I did studies on PTSD in elephants that showed how this affects these animals in very similar ways as it does in humans. So we can go to the next slide. I just wanted to mention that once again, I work with veterans who come from combat. One of the quotes I hear often is, "The wounds of war can go far beyond what meets the eye." And that's obvious to any of us who work with trauma. Veterans face a multitude of physical, psychological, and psychosocial issues unique to their service. And bottom line is, PTSD is hard on trust. And it's the same for animals. It's one of the things that makes animals very wary of humans when they've experienced trauma. And that's why the sanctuaries that I've created work on building trust for both the veteran and for the animal, the species that we're working with. And I started with parrots, but I've moved on also to canids, to wolves and wolf dogs. And we see that trust is foundational for all of these species. So now we're looking at Bessel van Van der Kolk's brilliant quote, "The body keeps the score, but also the brain keeps the score." There are so many ways that trauma affects our mental health, and our physical health, and including, just physical injuries and infectious diseases. If we move on, we see that not just are there physical symptoms of PTSD and traumatic brain injury, but there are, the headaches and the dizziness and balance problems, the sensitivity to light and fatigue and sleep disturbances. When it gets really severe, we see coma and paralysis. And then there's cognitive symptoms. If we move ahead a couple of slides, where there's forgetting and poor concentration and slow thinking and poor organizing and a lack of awareness. And the fact is that we see these symptoms, and it's sometimes very hard to tease these apart from other mental health issues that somebody might be experiencing, like depression and anxiety. But the emotional symptoms of TBI, traumatic brain injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorder also overlap greatly. And again, those need to be teased apart before we really start a treatment intervention. And we want to rule out anxiety and depression, although of course those also co-occur very frequently with these two disorders. If we move to the slide that says treatments recognized by the DoD and the Department of Defense, we see that there's traumatic brain injuries, that there's these physical symptoms, cognitive symptoms that overlap, emotional behavioral symptoms that overlap. But what happens, and you'll see in the next slide, is that the treatments that are recognized by the Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration are very limited. They're only things like cognitive rehabilitation, patient education, some stress management, symptom management like cognitive behavioral therapy, and emotional response prevention, and community integration, getting people back into the workforce, getting them back into families. But I always ask the question, is this enough? Is this really getting to the root of the problem? And I felt it wasn't. I felt it wasn't, and that's why I went to the VA and I banged on doors, and I waited the 6 years for them to get me the permits to finally build the sanctuary on the grounds of the VA. And that's what I call the Reciprocal Recovery Program, how these veterans and animals are healing each other. And because, like Sarit said earlier, we are born with this primary need for relatedness, and how important it is to vertebrate social species, any social animal, then we realize that building relationship is what is part of the healing process. Recognizing that we're all related, of course, is another part of building relatedness. But I think that when we realize that we're also suffering from the same type of disorder, that brings us closer together too, because trust is what is going to be the foundation of a lot of the work that we do. And we see that in psychotherapy, and I see that in the work that I'm doing in the sanctuaries that I operate. And from childhood, if we go to the next slide, I believe it's the next slide. From childhood, most of us had animal companions who were our best friend. Holding and petting animals is the primitive joy that harkens back to our shared evolution. We grew up together as a species and as individual beings, and this provides this shared relationship provides a great comfort in that eons long yet very personal link. So here you could see the actual relationship that develops. This man would not interact in my group therapy at all. He was belligerent, he was interruptive. But here he is with Mango, a cockatoo. And we see that providing these veterans with meaningful work is something that is extremely important. It bolsters their dignity and self-worth, and it helps the veteran contribute in a meaningful and productive way in their communities. They learn skills working with these parents. It's part of actually a work therapy program. The veterans get paid for this work. They care for the parrots, they provide their food, and they do the necessary sanitation and hygiene, and they feel like they're being of service again. And I believe we have a video. Um, where are we at with our video? There we go. There's Little Circus. So at Serenity Park, this is the name of the parrot sanctuary that I started. We have humans and parrots, both suffering from the same or similar trauma-based disorders, that are healed from the relationships that they develop at this sanctuary. Establishing a bond with a parrot provides the groundwork for the development of a sense of safety and trust. And from there, our veterans have gone on and reunited with spouses, with children, have been able to gain tenure back in the community, and they feel like they are part of something now. So when we bond with animals, we connect to the world on an emotional level that perhaps is deeper than anywhere else we go. And here's Picasso getting a head rub. And I have to tell you that these aviaries that the parrots are in are very large. The parrots do not have to come down. They are fully flighted. They can fly away if they care to. And Picasso came down to get this head rub. So this is a bond that lasts a lifetime. These parrots live as long as we do. We are committed to caring for them for their long lifetimes, and they are social beings and make these connections. I think that we have a video we can show you of the actual work. Here's Maggie and Ruby first, and here's Jeff and Molly. They really do see eye to each other. So here's a quick video, and I hope it plays well.
You can hear the place before you ever see it. In a lonely corner of Los Angeles is a home for dozens of parrots, many of them neglected, abandoned, abused. Hello. The people who care for these birds know something about trauma themselves. Most are veterans who still carry the emotional baggage of war. Come on. But in this tiny haven of wounded birds and troubled humans, there's a connection that's hard to miss.
Yeah.
Mike Flanagan served a combat tour in Vietnam.
That's your favorite in the morning?
He also served 22 years in prison for armed robbery. Zoe is an African gray, but to Mike, she's more than just a breakfast date.
If you'd have told me 5 years ago that I'd be sitting in a cage like this petting a bird, I'd have told you you're out of your mind. She adopted me 3 days after I got here.
She adopted you?
Oh, yeah.
What is this relationship between the two of you?
I think she immediately saw something in me that I needed, you know? She makes me feel like I'm important to her. I can't explain it because I don't know enough about parrots or birds or anything, but it's just a great feeling.
It's called Serenity Park. Zoe and 36 other birds are part of an animal therapy program that pairs them with vets suffering from PTSD. The veterans say that somehow the parrots can connect with them in a way that no human therapist ever could.
That might be the end of that video. We can go on. I'll show you a brief thing to show you just how they interact. These two are something else. Take a look. I just get such a kick out of watching these two. And they really do have this kind of relationship. It's really something else. So I went from the parrots and moved up to an area in Central California in order to have more land to rescue horses. But what I discovered was that there's another problem, another animal that is getting a real raw deal, and that's the wolf dog. People are breeding these animals for just some kind of trophy pet. I think it came from Games of Thrones or Twilight or some of those TV shows that promote the purchase of these animals, and they're being bred. I'm trying to stop it, but they are being bred. So I ended up starting a sanctuary for wolves and wolf dogs as well, and we call it the Warriors and Wolves program. And it works in a similar way, where symptom improvement is found by actually being of service to these animals and building a trusting relationship with them and being a part of not just a flock as the other veterans are with the parrots, but also part of a pack. And being accepted into a pack is something quite special. It really changes something in one. And here you see Joey with Rainier, both of them getting something quite healing out of this little partnership right here. The animals act as therapists. Sometimes I call myself a healer adjacent or a therapist adjacent, because the animals really do the work, but they also get a chance to recover as well, because the wolf dogs also come from horrendous conditions of confinement, of being in puppy mills. I just rescued 44 animals out of a puppy. Well, it was a fur farm, but it was also a breeding facility for wolf dogs, and it was just, the conditions were really outrageously awful. The animals come in very wary, very untrusting, and as you can see here, Rainier has recovered quite a bit. And we can go to the next slide. Wolves have elaborate family structures and communicate in ways that are very complex. So the veteran finds him or herself amongst the pack, gaining acceptance. And words like acceptance and belonging and family are extremely important for someone feeling so marginalized, because in the United States, very often the veterans are, especially Vietnam veterans, and it really is a tragedy. But we have another slide to show, or video, I think, and I did cover this one a bit. You'll get a copy of all these slides. You got to see. Oh, let me just mention something here. This is Nikki and Joey again, and you could see that touch is essential for these species. Social species, they rely on touch, and the wolves are always grooming each other, being with each other, sleeping right next to each other. So you can see the happiness on both of their faces. You can go to the next slide. And we can show the video, and then I'll talk a little bit about how
we're there every morning without fail, doing the cleanups, interacting with them, petting them. I've been with these wolves since we've got them from Alaska. I've seen them go from the chains where they were aggressive and mean to where some of them are just overgrown puppies.
My sister, I believe, was the one who inspired me the most, because I was 3-4 years old, and I stepped on an ant, and she said, "Oh, that has a mother and a father and a sister and a brother," and I cried, and I realized that everything is sentient. Everything has a life force that wants to avoid suffering, and I really believe that set me off on that path.
It's already been proven that animal therapy is good for people, period.
Serenity. It definitely offers me serenity. Like I said, I enjoy going to work every day. I enjoy helping the animals, doing something that isn't just for me.
You know, a lot of the times the vets don't want to talk one-on-one basis, but they'll talk to the animals, and they'll communicate a lot better with the animals than they will humans. It's more comforting to go just like sit with an animal and just kind of just get comfortable and feel that communication, that closeness, you know, even if it's through a cage, it doesn't matter.
Thank you for that. And the mentioning of through a cage is that our enclosures are very large. They're between 2 and 4 acres, and we once again give the animals plenty of space so that they can have agency and that they can hide and have privacy and not come over to the human if they don't want to. They have that choice, and that's part of what is necessary for the healing process. Some of the goals that we create, and we individualize, of course, for each animal and for each veteran who comes to us. We make sure that that their specific needs are being met, but overall, we establish a sense of safety and stability. We restore a connection between the survivor and their community. So we want to have other veterans with the veteran. We want to have other animals with the animal. No animal is alone, or we try to avoid any animal being alone. Sometimes, you know, over years they lose a mate, and we almost always replace their mates so that they're like I said, never alone, being social beings. So we want to increase a sense of mastery of perceived control over their environment. We encourage human-animal social bonding, human-human social bonding, animal-animal social bonding, the avoidance of isolation or marginalization. We don't let animals just keep hiding and keep hiding if we're feeling like they're missing out on something that's going to be important for them. And so a safe living environment without the triggers of what some of the traumas were for them. And let's see, do we have another slide, or is that the last one? Aha, questions and answers. I'll be happy to answer any questions that come through. I'm here and available, and I hope that you can hear me okay.